Terry Watts here with instalment 5 of my manifesto for the built environment. Those of you who've seen before, you'll notice that it's a new venue. Come downstairs because the truth be told, I'm decorating my study. It's a bit behind schedule and it's a bit of a mess up there. So I thought you wouldn't want to see that. So we're downstairs in the utility room now today. So hope it's a good venue for you. So today we're going to be looking at the engagement and leadership of the sector as a whole. Not individual businesses, but leading the change that we need to see in the sector in order to deliver the manifesto for the built environment. So you've seen this diagram before, where we have spoken before about the built environment itself and how we need to redefine that, because it's not just construction, it is the built environment. We talked about the steps to implement a change program in the built environment. We talked about the image and how that needs to be changed to reflect the new name, and the culture within the sector and how that is such an important driver of behaviours. And so now it's in engagement and leadership. And next time, business model. So before we start, I thought a quick definition of what leadership might be, which I'm nervous about because people could get hung up on this. It's not meant to be a rigorous definition. It's meant to be something that helps us in today's conversation. So for me, leadership is the ability and the skills required to assess situations, coordinate the response of people and resources to make the most of or achieve agreed objectives and outcomes. And the people bit is the important bit of that. You can find more resources, or you've got the resources you've got, but the people are the ones that are the variables. And I've found in my experience of changing businesses and working with teams, the more open, the clearer, and the more you communicate with your teams, the better the results you get from them, the more they commit themselves to it and become the best version of themselves that they can be. They're part of the journey with you. And I really think that's an important part of leadership. In terms of engagement in this context, it's really the activities or the tactics we deploy to try and reach out to others and to make sure that we get them on board with our journey and our destination, and make sure we get their leadership and we end up with the right place and everybody supporting us and aligning up with what we want to see achieved. So that's just engagement. It's a tactic there. So let's look at how leadership is being delivered in the industry today. And I've got 3 examples there of things where something has gone wrong. You could say just stupidity or common sense hasn't been applied. But I think there's a bit more of an issue behind that. The people who put a lamppost in the middle of someone's drive or built a staircase into a brick wall or allowed a pylon to be placed in the middle of a railway line, is something else is underlying that. And to me, it means that the leadership they've had doesn't allow them to challenge authority perhaps, or they didn't feel ownership of what they were trying to deliver, and they weren't invested in the quality and the completeness of the project they were working on. And so I think that underlies a lot of the quality issues that we see in the business. I think I mentioned that in a previous session. But also in terms of the situation, we see there's huge skill gaps and shortages in the industry, something like 200,000 people needed for the next few years. And that's going to get worse after people maybe don't come back after the COVID lockdown closes, and we want people back on site. Maybe they won't be there to do that, or want people back in different jobs and they'll have moved on to other careers. And then there's, of course, Brexit is just down the corner as well. So that's going to cause problems and shortages too, I'm sure. We've also got the broken business model where some parts of the supply chain are on such low margins, they're unable to respond strategically. They can't invest in their own staff as much as they want to. And we can't be sure that as a leader of a project, if you're not there, that your supply chain will respond in the way you need them to. And that causes all sorts of pressures and business failures, and we've got lots of examples of that. There's also resistance to change. People talk about technology and they automatically, in my experience, talk about BIM. And actually BIM is a very important part of the data-driven technology, but actually there's an awful lot of IT technology out there which helps productivity, which other sectors have taken advantage of for many years. We just haven't started to work with yet in the built environment, or if we have in the larger companies, it isn't pervasive across the whole sector. And then, of course, it's how we build and what we build with. My time in ProSkills, I saw a lot of the new technologies and techniques coming out of the supply chain to construction, which were just not being deployed, not being taken advantage of, because I believe we're stuck in the way of doing things and there's a resistance to change. I don't believe the business cases will stack up not to do this, but that's another topic for another presentation, perhaps. But all of those issues in the industry, added to the fact that some of the management techniques, either within organisations and with suppliers, is really aggressive and really harsh, but that leads to mental health issues. And those issues are something else we need to change. And they're going to be worse now coming out of COVID. A number of people will feel very despondent and down over this period of being unable to work and how they're going to respond to that. So that's the situation we're in. It's quite a difficult one. We've talked about that a lot. there's going back to the Egan days, lots of reports assessing the situation, and we're pretty good at understanding that in the built environment, and Mark Farmer's doing a great job of explaining all of that to us at the moment and beginning to point out directions there. So we know what we're trying to achieve, and we need to respond. I was talking to a colleague, senior colleague, about where we might take my manifesto if they liked it, and we couldn't between us work out who it would be that we'd take this to try and get the change and to get the program invented that we need to see, this change program that we need to have. Because everyone and no one is invested in the future. I mean, I've met hundreds of people from the built environment who really care, really passionate about what they've done, how their success is, what their delivery is, projects they're working on, and they love the environment, they love the industry. But they are in small companies, or they're small parts of big companies. How do they make the change happen? There's no one actually leading the change. And we don't really have the right mindset as well. We're so used to being focused on delivering a particular project within a set of parameters, that actually inspiring and leading isn't something that I've seen a great deal of. And if you want to see the sort of thing I'm trying to say, this is a quote from the guy who wrote The Little Prince. I won't try and say his name, but the quote sort of sets the scene, really. If you want to build a flotilla of ships, you don't sit around talking about carpentry. No, you need to set people's souls ablaze with visions of exploring distant shores. Okay, very poetic, romantic language, but you need to aim for the stars. You need to aim high to try and achieve something. And then, even if we don't quite make it there, we'll achieve something much better to make the step change that I think we need to see for the environment. But where is that destination going to be? What does success look like? And I can't define that. I can't give you the answer to that. But something I came across this week was a document produced very recently, last week actually, I think it came out, from the Centre of Digital Built Britain, which talked about a new concept. I hadn't heard it put this way before, was the built environment is a sustainable, effective, safe and lasting environment in which people can flourish. The word flourish really caught my attention. And it's about people really doing the best they can, living the best lives they can, and being enhanced and enriched by the surroundings they live in. And the way they present it is that the infrastructure, the housing and the whole environment that we create through the built environment, and how it links to the natural environment, is the thing that helps people flourish. And what we need is a vision and the leadership of the built environment to achieve that kind of ambition. What about engagement? And I kind of see the sector as being a bit like that. Lots of individuals, lots of small companies in this case, going in different directions, doing all sorts of things, running around trying to achieve whatever they're trying to achieve. But how do we engage with our sector? And is there anything we can learn from other sectors? Well, I've worked in lots of sectors, in the IT, in the skills, the education, the construction, the automotive, various other sectors as well. And of course, I've said construction, not sure. So lots of different sectors, and I haven't seen, and I can't think of an analogy for how it is in the built environment, because we've got big projects, big collaborative activities, yet lots and lots of small companies. And just looking at the construction part, 2.3 million, some say up to 500,000 businesses, with the biggest companies only being about 10,000 or 20,000 people. Those companies aren't big enough to influence the whole sector. If you go to the automotive sector, you've got Nissan, Ford, all those sorts of companies who have very static supply chains. And although not everybody works for them, they're big companies in their own right, but the supply chain doesn't work for them. They are static and they're there for many years. The relationships go on for a long while. They can influence them over a long period. The supply chains in our sector change every time a new project starts. Or the retail sector, where you've got 4 or 5 big retailers who call the shots, set the standards in the supply chain, and manage all sorts of aspects of how that industry works. Not intentionally, not as a cartel or anything, but they influence the direction of the sector. And then you've got the banks as well, where there are half a dozen or so, I'm not sure the number, but large banks who influence the way the sector works there. And that isn't the way it works in our sector. There's lots and lots of small companies. So I don't really see you can actually get the new ideas from other sectors. And as I said as well, the focus of our leading organisations is on construction. They're not always open to working with others. They sometimes can lead to a bit of a closed shop type mentality, and there's kind of, well, they're doing it, so therefore I can't do something type approach to things. And having worked in the professional body sector as well, there's a bit of protectionism there as well, feeling that there's a competition and collaboration isn't easy to engender. But the more we collaborate on projects, the more we collaborate and try to check the direction for the industry and to influence the direction, the better, I think. And that's what we've got to try to prove and to get people to understand. But all that leads you on to actually the conclusion I've reached is that we are the leaders, you and I, people who lead businesses, people who lead teams, people who are doing business out there every day in the sector. We're leading the changes, and we are the ones who need to make sure there's a difference there. And that is why we need a groundswell, a movement of people. Those guys that I met at the CIOB when I was there who felt passionately about the industry, wanted to do their bit. We need to enlist their passion and enthusiasm and make it work and get it work for them, to get it to work for all of us, and drive those sorts of people's contribution to making the sector as a whole change. And a bit of a, it's not meant to be an advert for Building People, but that's one of the places where I'm working with Building People to try and help get that activity, looking at diversity in the workforce, up and running. That's a really important aspect, an example of how working together, lots of small organisations can make a much bigger impact on the sector as a whole. So that's what we're trying to do, and that's the way I think it needs to be done. And until the leadership and engagement is managed in such a way that we are working from the bottom up and we are enlisting the passion of those in the industry, we're not going to make it work. So I really believe that's the truth. So there we are. Not sure how long that took. Hope it wasn't too long for you. That's the leadership and leadership and engagement part of the manifesto for the built environment. Next week, we talk about the business model. Hope that was of interest. I really look forward to hearing back from you with any comments, and thank you for those who've been in touch. Speak to you next week.